Welcome back, horror fans, cinephiles, and giallo enthusiasts. This is Tanner Leeser, your host for all things giallo, here on The King in Giallo. We are continuing our coverage for the only giallo film from Ferdinando Merighi, The French Sex Murders, released in June 1972. In this video, I will give you a condensed version of the full-length overview video covering only the cast and crew and the plot of the movie, then I'll transition into the GialliTally. The GialliTally will contain heavy spoilers. Here is The French Sex Murders Overview. The French Sex Murders, whose Italian title translates as House of Rendezvous, is an Italian and West German co-production. The film is directed by Ferdinando Merighi, billed as F.L. Morris, who also co-wrote it along with Marius Mattei and Dick Randall, billed as Robert Oliver. Music is composed by Bruno Nicolai. The cast is comprised of Anita Ekberg as Madame Colette, Rosalba Neri as Mariana, Robert Sacchi as Inspector Fontaine, Howard Vernon as Professor Valdemar, Barbara Boucher as Francine, Evelyn Kraft as Eleonora, Pietro Matalanza, billed as Peter Martel as Antoine Gavale, and Renato Romano as Mr. Randall. The plot begins with the brutal murder of a prostitute for which a man named Antoine is swiftly arrested and sentenced to death. During his trial, Antoine curses everyone involved in his conviction, vowing to return from the grave and take revenge. Shortly after escaping, he dies in what appears to be a freak accident, seemingly bringing the case to a close. But when more victims begin turning up, murdered in the same gruesome fashion, Inspector Fontaine, the arresting officer, returns to investigate. As the killings continue, those connected to Antoine's sentencing can't shake the feeling that his curse may be real and that someone, or something, is carrying out his deadly promise. But I digress. On to the GialliTally. Spoilers ahead for those of you who haven't yet seen the film. You've been warned. My prediction for the movie's GialliTally score. In my unscripted review video, I predicted around 700 to 750 points. Well, let's begin the GialliTally portion of the video, beginning as always with the previewing cliches. The repeat offenders are 1 point for actor, 3 for writer, 3 for composer, and 5 for director. Rosalba Neri was in Naked Girl Killed in the Park, Smile Before Death, Amok, Slaughter Hotel, and Top Sensation, 5 points. Barbara Boucher was in Smile Before Death, Amok, Black Belly of the Tarantula, and The Man with Icy Eyes, 4 points. Alessandro Perella was in Death Falls Lightly and Beleth, the Demon of Incest, 2 points. Beleth is not quite a giallo, but I'll give it to it, why not? Ada Pometti was in The Cat in Heat, was also an extra in Four Flies on Grey Velvet, but I won't count that, but I just wanted to mention it. Madness, Gli Occhi della Luna, The Cat o' Nine Tails, and Naked Violence, 4 points. Franco Borelli was in The Weekend Murders, 1 point. Renato Romano was in Seven Bloodstained Orchids, The Iguana with the Tongue of Fire, The Fifth Chord, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and Death Laid an Egg, 5 points. And Bruno Nicolai composed All the Colors of the Dark, The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave, and The Case of the Scorpion's Tail, 9 points. Cliché points for the title, The French Sex Murders, contains the word murders, 5 points. First look, 25 points for the Italian director, and 15 points for this movie releasing during the golden age of giallo cinema. And would you look at that, it is plot o'clock. Whew, my nipples turned into ice picks, must mean we have a cold open, 5 points. Foreign locales, Paris, France, 5 points. Urban locales, 2 points. Foot chase, 5 points. We follow a person chased by police up the Eiffel Tower. Up, up, up we go, until Inspector Bogart here witnesses the person jump and plummet to the ground in the worst falling effect ever seen in giallo cinema. They were nearly caught and saved by the title card, but alas, someone dies by falling to their death. 15 points. I'd like to address how this scene just barely missed out on more points for a rooftop chase leading to a death, because, well, this ain't no roof. After our opening credits, we watch Inspector Bogart give us the briefest narration and hurl us back in time to how it all began. I hate in medias res when it is used like this, but what am I gonna do? We go back in time and follow a man into a church. Art featured, 5 points. Z is for zoom. Extra points for a zoom on eyes, 10 points. E is for eyeballs, 5 points. The man, with a prominent scar under his eye, steals jewelry from the church and exits. Outside, the same man observes some revelers. As we were told earlier, this is the final day of Carnival, aka Mardi Gras. The man observes 2 shrouded men dropped off via taxicab who then approach and enter this brothel. U is for undercover, 5 points. While the gate is unlocked, the man scurries in behind them. Inside, the man is seen and ordered to leave at the behest of the madam, but he insists that he is a paying customer. Gratuitous 1970s dancing, 2 points. Tarot readings, 5 points. I've decided to include this into my category which covers psychic visions, mediums, and seances. A couple of the girls recognize the strange man, Antoine, asking what he's doing here. The film's writer and producer drops by. Antoine pays the madam and finds a room with Francine, Barbara Boucher's character. The madam tells Antoine this is the last time he's welcome, and to Francine, she says to make it quick because the other gentleman asked specifically for her. In the bedroom, Antoine adorns Francine with all of the jewelry stolen and worships her. He tells her that she must only be his. We learn that Antoine served in Vietnam and that this factors into how he is able to process love. Necking, 5 points. N is for nudity, 5 points. Renato Romano's character, who by the way is uncredited, we learn is an author here researching for a book. He asks Madame Colette about the masked men who entered. She says she cannot tell him due to discretion. He asks for Francine. Francine is called upon, which upsets Antoine. He begins attacking her. Typical 1970s Italian misogyny, woman is slapped, 5 points. Y is for yelling, 5 points. Antoine leaves the brothel in a hurry. Mr. Randall sees him leave and asks about Francine. Outside, Antoine passes a constable and immediately runs away. Cut back to Mr. Randall clutching bloody jewelry, informing Madame Colette that Francine has been murdered. The masked men are told to leave. Cut to Inspector Fontaine, played by Humphrey Bogart lookalike Robert Sacchi. Everybody confirms to Inspector Fontaine that Antoine Gatvalis was the last customer with Francine. Fontaine asks about the other girls and other clients, but adhering to discretion, Madame Colette doesn't give out any names, but asserts that Antoine had threatened Francine in the past. Q is for questions, 5 points. An APB is put out for Antoine. We cut into a bedroom with 2 people going at it. Note, there is nudity in this art, but I don't count paintings. Antoine begins knocking and beating on the door, demanding that Marianne let him in. He begs for her help, but she declares that he only shows up when he needs help and asks him to leave. The other man tells Antoine to get lost. Antoine threatens them through the door, but takes off at the sound of police klaxons. The police arrive, and we get the silliest chase. Fontaine slaps the cuffs on Antoine. We cut to Professor Waldemar weighing in on Antoine's case and his paranoia. Beside Waldemar is his daughter, Eleonora, and across from him is Judge Tishy. Waldemar speaks on the autopsy report, citing Francine's brain was crushed due to blunt force trauma from the lamp used. Eleonora excuses herself. Waldemar tells Teshy that this case should be an easy one for him to judge. This is Roger, Waldemar's new assistant. Roger mentions wanting to take Eleonora out tonight, but Waldemar rejects this, stating he needs her to transcribe notes for him tonight. Waldemar asks Roger to collect the psychiatric reports on Antoine tomorrow. Eleonora walks Roger to the door, and they lament how they can't go out tonight. Roger steals a kiss, prompting Eleonora to chastise him for being so bold, stating her father would forbid them from ever seeing each other ever again. Cut to everybody who knew Antoine discussing his guilt or not. Madame Colette wants justice, but Marianne, Antoine's ex-wife, states that despite having a terrible temper, she cannot believe him capable of murder. Mr. Randall stops Roger to ask if they can speak on these matters sometime. Pepe invites them to his club tonight, where Marianne frequently sings. Madame Colette invites them to her house now that the police have forced her to close its doors for business purposes. Judge Teshy declares that Antoine has been tried and found guilty for Francine's murder and will be executed, but he proclaims that he is innocent. He curses all of his peers, stating one of them did the murder. Waldemar reads later in the paper how Antoine vowed to return somehow and exact his revenge on the entire lot, pointing out how the judge is also included on his list. This is Tina, played by Piera Viotti, who is the sister of giallo actress Patrizia Viotti. I was wondering why there was this uncanny resemblance. And crazy, because if her sister Patrizia Viotti was in this movie instead of her, then that would be 3 actresses from Amok all found in this movie: Patrizia Viotti, Barbara Boucher, and Rosalba Neri. Anyways, Mr. Randall overhears that Antoine has escaped captivity and is at large. He makes a call. T is for telephone, 5 points. Cut to Antoine in a getaway vehicle. First person POV, 5 points. In order to avoid suspicion, Antoine puts a hat on and drives like an asshole. Reckless driving, 5 points. The super genius then decides that the next best thing for him to do is to steal a motorcycle because, obviously, it will be more difficult to identify him this way. And to anyone saying that the car was reported stolen, well, so will the bike.
He's stealing my bike! Hey, stop him!
Bro, what the fuck do you expect them to do about it?
He's stolen a motorcycle.
This gives him an edge in Paris traffic.
Still. Antoine foolishly rides up to a police checkpoint and then escapes. This at least gives us a car chase, 7 points. Antoine eventually crashes into a truck, decapitating himself in the process. We are at Pepe's club with Marianne singing, and the most overtly aggressive man I've ever seen in a movie in quite some time. Typical 1970s Italian misogyny, woman is groped, 7 points. J is for J and B, extra points for it being drunk, 10 points. Randall isn't here still, so Roger leaves. Everybody in the club can see the man and what he is doing. Tina tries to get away. Woman is saved by a man, 10 points. Pepe beats the man down and throws him out of the club. Marianne later asks why Pepe shows such interest in Tina. Fontaine asks to speak with Marianne. He ponders what she'd said about Antoine not being the killing type, but he is interrupted by Pepe, who asks Marianne to prepare for the next number. Cut to Roger and Professor Waldemar. Waldemar, on the phone with Judge Teshy, inquires if he could have the head of Gutvalis for his scientific research. Later now with the head, Roger asserts that he just saw the iris contract, but Judge Teshy is here, and so Waldemar asks Roger to keep this between them for now. Waldemar thanks Teshy for the head, but reminds him of Antoine's vow to avenge himself beyond the grave. Check out this tie. F is for fashion, 5 points. Animals featured, pet cats and dog, 2 points. Roger tells Eleonora they must tell her father about them. Madame Colette calls Fontaine, asking to have her massage parlor reopened, but there's nothing he can do. He finds it suspicious that she would want to have her place of business reopened.
Madame Colette, what's her problem? I like the idea of having a massage parlor closed up.
It's like, are they trying to make her seem suspicious? The gals seem worried. Madame Colette checks Francine's room upstairs and finds a box full of money. A prowler is outside and climbs over the wall. Madame Colette retrieves a pistol from her vanity. Close up on a door handle or creeping through an ajar door, 5 points. Someone enters inside. The lights go out. Colette is attacked and bludgeoned to death with a lamp. Fontaine interrogates the film's producer over why he would make such a subpar giallo film, and he says, because of money. Randall is called in, and Fontaine asks him to recall every detail from the night of the murder, but he claims to have already disclosed every detail. Randall believes the motive was money, and Francine was known to hoard her cash earnings, not trusting banks. He remarks one other call girl had an interest in the subject, Alice, but she had left the house and no one has seen her. Fontaine asks for Alice to be brought in. Fontaine posits that a writer ought not hang out around prostitutes in order to write about it, suggesting Randall of having other intentions, which insults him. Cut to Waldemar and Teshy playing chess, the former continuing to bring up the curse of Antoine and to take it seriously. Roger continues to lament to Eleonora of their secret relationship. Oh, wait a minute. S is for secrets, 5 points. Waldemar relays his findings concerning Antoine's brain, and he believes him to have been a schizophrenic. Teshy says that with Colette's murder, he is reopening the case. He states that he has all of the case files at home and wants to peruse them for any judicial mistakes. Roger seems suspicious over this discussion. Waldemar calls checkmate, but Teshy nearly passes out. Roger sees Teshy back home to his villa. Waldemar dissects Antoine's eye. Extra points for E is for the eyeball being mutilated. Another 5 points. I won't give the separate points for mutilations concerning eyes, because I will reserve that for a living person being attacked, but just hold on that one. Eleonora says goodnight to her father, but he speaks to her about the way Roger has been looking at her recently and how he doesn't like it. Teshy calls to say he's feeling better and is going to read up on the Gutvalis transcript. Waldemar says goodnight, despite sunlight coming through the windows. Marianne tries to ask Tina if she's been seeing Pepe on the side, but she is evasive. Marianne demands to know, stating Pepe is frequently gone for hours, such as tonight. We find Pepe with a different girl, Alice. Pepe says how nobody knows about the two of them, then remarks about all that money. Alice asks if Pepe will take care of Marianne, and he says he will, and leaves to attend to some business. Alice packs a bag as instructed, but a prowler is seen outside. G is for gloves, extra points for them being black, 10 points. K is for knives, extra points for the blade reflecting the light, 10 points. The killer slips inside just as this other man rounds the corner. The killer goes upstairs and hides as Teshy's maid, Doris, meets with her boyfriend, Martin. They take it into her room. The killer waits outside, but Martin goes to close the door, and so the killer proceeds to Teshy. The killer's identity is hidden due to framing and editing, 2 points. Aardvarking, 10 points. Teshy hears a sound, calls out to Doris, then retrieves a pistol. Extra points for Z is for a zoom on a weapon, 5 more points. While the maid knocks boots, Teshy is surprised by the killer from behind, his throat slashed. Eleonora wakes from a nightmare, finds her father is not in bed, and discovers him still in his lab. She tells him that she had a nightmare that someone else was killed, but the phone rings. It's Doris, the maid, who tells Waldemar that Teshy has been killed. Funeral scene, 2 points. Well, it's clearly the aftermath of a funeral. Randall, Waldemar, and Fontaine discuss the events. The names on the list still include Mr. Randall, Pepe, and Marianne. Randall asserts the story will make him very famous. By the way, I thought he was an author, but I guess it turns out that writer means journalist, so R is for reporter, 5 points. I mean, at least it says online that he's a reporter, but I don't know. It might be a different version of the movie. Mr. Randall asks about Doris and her lover Martin being in custody. Inspector Fontaine says something about how they must only be accomplices because they aren't strong enough to have committed the murders. I don't really know what that means. Then Waldemar calls Doris's lover Mike, which I don't understand at this moment why that is. But he asserts this isn't a curse, but a coincidence, and leaves. Fontaine believes he sees scratches on Randall's neck, but is mistaken. He uses this distraction, however, to steal Mr. Randall's manuscript from his pocket. He tells Mr. Randall to come to the station later for further questioning and that it might help his book. Okay, so I guess he is an author. I don't fucking know. Keep the reporter points. Just have them. Fontaine is questioning Martin over his alibi corroborated by Doris of him leaving. A is for alibi, 5 points. Martin smokes a cigarette and signs a statement. After being released, Fontaine announces that Martin is not their guy because he is left-handed, but the killer is right-handed. Fontaine tries to call Marianne, but she's not there. He makes another call to someone else. We follow Fontaine as he enters into an apartment and finds Alice dead. Extra points for N is for nudity for someone being killed while nude, another 5 points. Next, he finds Pepe dead in the bathtub. Bathtub murder scene, 7 points. We didn't see it, but sure. And extra points for Z is for a zoom on a dead body. 5 more points. We watch Roger skulk around outside. He meets with Eleonora and they talk about what else? How her father wouldn't approve of them seeing each other. Well, they get caught by Waldemar, who kicks out Roger. Fontaine inquires about how many girls worked for Madame Colette, and he's told 5. Kiki, Rosie, Marlene, Francine, and Alice. But Fontaine mentions that in Mr. Randall's manuscript that he mentions a 6th, Eleonora. At the club, the barkeep mentions not having seen Marianne for some time. Fontaine asks Roger if he was ever a client of Madame Colette's because of his obvious interest in Eleonora. We cut to Mr. Randall watching Tina dance for him. Outside, the killer cuts the glass and enters. Spiral staircase, 5 points. As the two get frisky, they are interrupted by someone at the door. It is Marianne. Marianne apologizes to Tina for accusing her of being the one who was with Pepe. Tina later admits to having arranged to meet with Pepe the night he was murdered, but it was purely business related. He was going to give her money for an arrangement. Tina exits into the other room. Randall asks Marianne what's up, and she expresses not being able to understand why Pepe was murdered. They mention both not believing in the curse, and yet everyone close to Antoine is ending up murdered. Mr. Randall excuses himself to attend to something. Hooking up with Tina, of course. I love how Mr. Randall doesn't even see Marianne out. He just starts ripping Tina's clothes off in the other room. The killer finds a sword mounted on the wall and equips it. Marianne finally takes the hint and goes to leave, but the killer grabs her and cuts her head off with the sword. Mr. Randall notices the commotion and goes to check. The lights are turned off. Randall finds Marianne's head on the floor. The killer, from behind the curtain, cries out,
Oh no, a rat! Dead for a ducat! Down!
And stabs Randall.
I am slain!
Randall stumbles forward and dies. Okay, I want you to take note of two things. One, Mr. Randall is dead here, yes? And two, the killer was unseen, yes? Okay, carry on. The killer lies in wait as Tina comes out. She stumbles upon the bodies. The killer then garrots Tina. Inspector Fontaine and the police enter and find the 3 bodies, plus a message written in blood on the ground. A giant M or a W scrawled in blood. Tina's body is found with the eyes seemingly gouged out. Well, mutilation of eyes, 5 points. There you go. Inspector Fontaine notices the letter and says aloud, Martin, as we flash back to Waldemar saying Mike, her lover. That makes sense. Remember how I questioned why he said Mike when they clearly said his name was Martin? Odd clue, 5 points. Cut to Doris and Martin in bed. The bell rings. Inspector Fontaine asks Doris if she has a boyfriend other than Martin, but she says no, the 2 of them are engaged. He asks about a Mike, and she says that Martin is his real name. He asks her to explain. She says that when they make love, she calls him Mike. Okay. Fontaine realizes that the M written in blood is most certainly a W. Eleonora finds her dad in his lab still. The music stinger here seems to beat the script to the final reveal.
Daddy? Are you right?
Waldemar, now clearly insane, tells his daughter he loves her. She freaks out. Hidden identity of the killer until the final moments. 5 points. Roger bursts inside and saves Eleonora. He claims Waldemar is a psychopath and that he was jealous of anyone who got near his daughter. Furthermore, every time he had visited Madame Colette's, all of the girls were Eleonora to him. O is for obsession. Extra points for the killer being obsessed. 10 points. Extra points for S is for secrets, for the killer having an impossible to predict motivation. 5 points. Better late than never. Exposition dumping, 2 points. I'm sorry, but this explanation really doesn't make much sense. Continue. Waldemar grabs a blade and attacks. The 2 struggle, but are broken up by Inspector Fontaine and the police. Fontaine declares Randall wrote a W in his own blood to identify Waldemar. But, how? 1, he was dead for a ducat, and 2, Waldemar was behind the curtain, so Randall would not have been able to identify his killer in the first place. Fontaine asserts that Waldemar and Teschi were Madame Colette's 2 VIP clients, the masked ones we saw in the beginning. Inspector Fontaine says he found a mask in Teschi's house and claims that if he looks, he'll find one here too. He says Francine was Waldemar's first victim. In a flashback, we see that Waldemar had entered Francine's room after Antoine had left. He enters and begins calling her Eleonora. He tries to touch her, but Francine commands him to get out. She insults him, calling him crazy, and he orders her to shut up. Typical 1970s Italian misogyny, woman is told to shut up. 2 points. Francine screams that she's not Eleonora and kicks Waldemar away. Extra points for Y is for yelling, for a hysterical woman yelling. 5 more points. Waldemar grabs the lamp and attacks her. Fontaine lays it all out. Waldemar had committed the other killings to cover up his tracks. Had Fontaine looked into Francine's murder more, he would have found out either from Colette or Teschi that the 2 of the men were there the same time Gutvalis was present. Waldemar yells that it was all Gutvalis and his accursed eyes that had driven him into madness to commit the killings. Yeah, that will hold up in court. Fontaine calls him out for trying to shift the suspicion onto Roger. Waldemar makes a break for it. And we are right back where we started. We watch the chase once again, as well as the terrible matte effect. The killer takes their own life or dies accidentally, by falling in this case. 10 points. In Waldemar's pockets was one of Antoine Gutvalis' eyes. And the credits roll. Let's add up some final cliches. So it's not explicitly clear in the film, but Antoine and Marianne are divorced, and Pepe is supposedly her new husband. So, I is for infidelity, 5 points. Again, in the movie, all she says technically was,
"After all, he was my husband."
but the internet seems to declare that they are divorced and that Pepe is her new husband. Okay, fine, I'll take it. Extra points for T is for telephone, for the killer making a call, 5 more points, and somebody else is believed to be the killer, aka mistaken identity, 5 points. And that's the French sex murders. Okay, so yeah, I will be really honest. I don't really particularly care for this giallo. You know, I own it, whatever. I will say though that writing this GialliTally, I picked up on way more details and I started liking it a little bit more, but in the end, I still don't really care for it all that much. It's not bad per se, but it's just not my thing. And I know some people do enjoy this movie, but the consensus on the internet seems to be that it's very subpar, and I do believe so. I'll give my thoughts on the reveal because that was something I didn't mention in the unscripted review. Yeah, I think it's dumb. I mean, all the work that goes into the script, sure, but there's just so many plot holes. Like, for example, the moment that Antoine leaves the bedroom and he is seen by Mr. Randall goes upstairs because he's looking for Francine. And so logically, it doesn't really make sense that there was enough time for Professor Waldemar to enter the bedroom, have that back and forth with her, and then murder her, and then slip out and go back into the other room before Mr. Randall went in there. It just doesn't really make sense to me. They could have set it up in a way that did, but really it seems like the movie was just kind of taking advantage of the fact, like, well, we didn't show it, so, you know, we can technically say this is how the timeline played out. Beyond that, yeah, the movie is fine. The whole thing with the eyes is interesting. I do feel like the movie is also trying to make more people come off as suspicious, but to me, it doesn't really land. Like, the movie can do all it wants to have a moment that implies someone is suspicious, but sometimes it really feels tacked on. Like, well, we need more red herrings than just these two people. Yeah, the movie it's just okay. It's not the worst, but it's certainly, if I was to do a tier list, I would put this pretty damn low. Anyways, let's segue to the GialliTally cliches for this movie. Post-giallo viewing cliches. The reason for the killing. Mental illness, psychopathy, or obsession. 7 points. The reason for the investigation. Police investigator, 2 points. Bonus points. The style bonus. The movie is not that stylish, despite having some in-your-face stylistic moments. I mean, the movie did max out the points possible for things to zoom onto. There were some slow zoom outs, there were POV shots while driving, there was that invert video negative effect, and the color tinting effect with the stuttering during all the kills. It doesn't do anything for me. The negative effect kind of works because it's supposedly a curse being, laid out, but the stuttering with the color tinting, I think, is just over the top for no reason. Well, out of a maximum of 25 points possible, I will give the French Sex Murders 13 points for its style bonus. Soundtrack.
J'ai perdu l'espoir. Viens avec moi, j'ai soif.
Yes, 15 points. Even though it's thrown together from other movies. Bad effects. Yes, we have 2 fake heads in all of their glory, and that matte effect during the fall is easily one of the worst looking effects I've ever seen. 15 points. Final look. Extra points. The Deadpool, tallying how many kills and deaths are featured in the film. I break it down as thus. 10 points per kill or death scene for the main Deadpool, plus any stylistic kill multipliers, which we didn't add yet, plus the knife kill bonus. We have Francine, bludgeoned, 15 points. Antoine Gatvalis, decapitated, 20 points. Madame Colette, bludgeoned, 15 points. Judge Teshi, throat slit with a knife, 22 points. Alice, we don't see it for certain, but she appears to have been bludgeoned, 15 points. I want to point out that 2 separate websites who catalog kills in movies both said that her face was skinned. In high definition, you can clearly see that her face is not skinned, and it's still there. Those are wounds from being beaten with an object. I think the art department just went really happy with the fake blood. But nah, her skin is still there. Also, they've established that he's bludgeoned people before. They haven't established that he has a thing for stealing their skin. So no, I'm sorry, but he did not skin her face. Peppy, throat slit. We don't see the knife, so I won't give the knife kill bonus. 17 points. Marianne, decapitated, 20 points. Mr. Randall, impaled, 16 points. Tina, garroted with ribbons, 13 points. And Professor Waldemar, who fell, 10 points. Red herrings for the total number of legitimate suspects in the film. 5 points per legit suspect are awarded. We have Antoine Gatvalis, Mr. Randall, Professor Waldemar, Roger, and Peppy. 25 points for red herrings. I want to say that the movie tries to make way more people out to be suspicious, but I never felt these were really even halfway credible. Flashback sequences, 5 points each. We have 1, 2, and 3. 15 points for flashbacks. Nudity, I award 5 points for ass, 7 for breasts, and 10 for genitalia. We have breasts, ass and genitals, breasts, ass and breasts, ass and breasts, ass, breasts, breasts, and breasts. 84 points for nudity. Not as much as you would think. Ladies and gentlemen, for the French sex murders, I awarded the film an AZ score of 16 out of 26. With the bonus points for these, we have a modified score total of 140 points. And for the full GialliTally score, I award the French sex murders a GialliTally score of 709 points. Compared to Short Night of Glass Dolls in first with 969 points, What Have You Done to Solange in second with 933 points, and The Case of the Bloody Iris in third with 830 points, The French Sex Murders is in 11th with 709 points. I predicted around 700 to 750 points, so wow, I was right on it this time. But like I say, these points do not mean a movie is better or worse. Please like this video, share it with your friends if they are horror fans or cinephiles, subscribe to The King in Giallo if you haven't yet, and if you have any questions, thoughts, curiosities, or concerns, leave those below in the comments section and I will get back to you. Give The King in Giallo a follow on Instagram and a like on Facebook. Subscribe to The King in Giallo Patreon to see early access to all of the YouTube videos, exclusive video series that can only be found there, and to generally support what I do. Next time on The King in Giallo will be the overview, review, and GialliTally for the only Giallo film directed by Renato Poselli, Delirium. Thank you all again very much for your continued support, and a special thank you to those who support me on Patreon. This is Tanner Leeser for The King in Giallo, and if nothing else, I'll see you next time.
Get away!